Hi everybody, John here with Cruiser Customizing. Today we're going to be installing one of Cobra's Powerflo air intake systems on our 2013 Ultra Classic Limited. You can get this and all the other Cobra accessories at cruisercustomizing.com. The Cobra Powerflo air intake system we're going to be installing today actually fits all of the dressers from 2008 until 2016. It's part number 6060100. Most of the steps we're going to be doing today are actually very similar to just replacing your stock air filter. So if it gets dirty and you've replaced it in the past, a lot of this process is going to look extremely familiar. First thing we're going to do, remove the bolt out of the cover, and we'll set that off to the side because we won't be reusing that. Next up, we've got the stock air filter here. We'll just spin these screws out. This is actually a paper air filter that's still in here from the factory, and when we replace this with the K&N air filter that comes in the kit, you're going to see a tremendous boost in the ability for this thing to suck up air. Just be careful as you pull this thing apart, because there are some hoses on the back side of this mounting plate and air filter. We'll be reusing those, so you don't want to damage them during the disassembly process. It's also something that you want to be careful of whenever you're replacing your air filter on a normal basis as well. So as you pull this out, you can actually just pop those hoses right off the back there and then gently pull them from that stock air filter, because we will be reusing those. So now that we've got that stock filter out of the way, we'll go ahead and set it off to the side because we do not need it right now. Now in the back you've got just a couple bolts here. These bolts are a bit unique because they have a hole straight through the middle of them, and that's going to allow vapors and gases to pass in between the intake and the cylinder head. We will not be reusing the stock units here, but still be very careful as you pull all this stuff out. And then we'll set it off to the side. In case you've got a buddy that has a stock air cleaner that has an issue with it, maybe he wants your old parts, so we'll just keep all those together off to the side. Now we can start the install process on our new intake system. So what we're going to do first is we'll take the velocity stack and the mounting plate and we'll mount that onto the bike. Then we'll actually take the air cleaner itself, and they'll have a couple screws that come in from the back side that hold the cover on, and that cover actually holds the air filter in place as well. So before we do that, we've actually got to get this mounting plate secured onto the bike. When you do this, you've got to make sure everything is in the proper orientation. So again, we've got those two holes at the very top. That's where those breather tubes are going to go through into the air intake system and then hook back into the cylinder heads. So whenever this goes on the bike, that's the orientation you're going to want. You'll want the single bolt hole all the way down at the bottom, and then your two holes there for those air intake tubes to cross over through that velocity stack. And you've got to make sure the velocity stack goes on in the right orientation. Those hoses are actually going to go right into these pre-drilled holes that allow that vapor to pass right through that velocity stack. But before we can put any of that on, we actually need to put these new bolts that go into the cylinder heads and thread them into place. Now these particular bolts, since it is going to allow all of that vapor to pass through, they do have a hole right through the middle of them, and these are aluminum, so be very, very careful as you thread these into place. You do not need to over torque or over tighten any of this stuff as it goes on. Just quarter turns is going to be more than secure. We'll tighten those up after we get this mounting plate into place. So included in your kit, you're going to get a new gasket that goes on the back to make sure this system seals up, so no dirt is going to be able to penetrate the system. You're also going to get some new bolts that allow you to attach the mounting plate and your velocity stack onto the intake. So we'll make sure everything is in the correct orientations. We've got the holes lined up at the very top, and then we can drop these bolts through. With the bolts dropped through, just kind of cover all those bolts with your hand so you can spin it upside down and drop this gasket into place. The gasket actually helps secure those bolts as everything goes on. All right. All right, now we've got everything started on there. Go ahead and start threading this onto the bike. Make sure you get all the bolts started first before you tighten anything down. It just keeps everything from getting into a bind. And before anything's secured, you want to put those rubber hoses back into place. So they'll just come through that velocity stack in the very back there. Just make sure they're seated all the way in. All right, with those into place, now we can go ahead and secure our Allen bolts here. Whenever I tighten this up, just gonna kind of do it like a tire. Just work around in a circle here. That way I don't over tighten one side and end up warping this aluminum velocity stack. All right, that's getting everything tight. Now it's time for the cover. Before we put the cover on, a couple things to note here. One, make sure you get your plate back into place. Get it in the right direction there. And we'll also go ahead and fit the air filter. It's just going to fit right over top of that velocity stack. Now this part is a bit cumbersome. You kind of got to support this screen with your finger just a little bit as everything goes on. And you can reach up behind the intake just a little bit if you've got to make some minute adjustments. But you'll use the 3 screws or the 3 bolts that come in the cover whenever it's right out of the package, and those will just thread right in from the back side. So let's go ahead and start this one into place. As you can see, these can be a little bit of a pain because you can't see anything behind there. But if you just take your time, exercise a little bit of patience, they'll start in. Now we'll grab the one in the top corner here. This one's my least favorite. All right, screen's in place where it needs to go. Now I'm going to try to get all of these finger tight. Then I can use the wrench here to tighten them back up just that last little bit. Again, these don't have to be torqued down real tight. Just snug them up to make sure they aren't going to rattle loose while you're riding down the road. All right. Now that we've got everything installed and tightened back up, you can see that it's not a very difficult process at all. It's just a few more steps than replacing your stock air filter, and you're left with a nice, huge, chrome, shiny air intake system that's going to allow you to flow a whole lot more air into the bike so you can create some more power. So that'll wrap us up for today, everybody. I hope you've enjoyed our install. If you have any questions about it, please leave them for us in the comment section below. If you haven't done so far, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel so you don't miss out on any of the new upcoming videos. Till next time, everybody, I hope you've enjoyed our install. My name's John. Please ride safe.